So the honeymoon is over and the Galaxy S26 was unveiled a couple days over 3 months ago. And I want to give you my 3 month review now that the novelty, the shiny purple novelty has worn off. And I want to kind of give a comparison to its direct competitor, the iPhone 17, to help you decide maybe which is going to be the better phone for you going into the summer. So 3 months later, let's start with the ergonomics in the real world kind of feel of these phones day to day. First thing I want to talk about is the Galaxy S26 is kind of just feeling and shaped a lot more like the Ultra now. So this phone, a little bit more rectangular. It's still curved a little bit in the corners. It's flat, but it just kind of feels like a mini S26 Ultra without the S26 Ultra's benefits like the better camera, the S Pen, and the like. This one comes in at a pretty lightweight 167 grams. The iPhone 17 still giving you that nice weight to it as well at 177, but giving you those curved corners. You'll see right here, camera control. Over here on the Galaxy, we have a clean edge on this side, whereas we have buttons on the iPhone over there, action button, volume rockers. So I think the button layout is a little bit cleaner on the Galaxy, although I also find its power button location a little bit better. Its volume rocker is a bit high, but so is the iPhone's on the left over there. Day to day though, I have to say that the iPhone 17 after 3 months later just feels like the more comfortable to hold phone. It really comes just down to the shape of those corners. And we're also seeing this kind of be copied by a few other manufacturers, this kind of like shape. So it's been happening. The Galaxy though goes a different route. It gives you that more rectangular look, but honestly, this phone, while it is lighter, it definitely feels just about the same height, but in reality, it just kind of feels a little bit less comfortable because of the shape. However, it's not that much. It's just a very small amount, but enough for me to make mention of it. But it really just comes down to which one you prefer. But I think it's kind of like, if you like this look, you will be sacrificing a little bit of comfort from this shape if you think this is just too standard on the left. So it's kind of strange to be saying this, but the iPhone actually has the better display this go around between the base models. It actually gets brighter at 3000 its peak. This one peaks out at 2600. Now those are very high numbers, so they're not really going to be like way better. One's not going to be way better than the other, but the honest truth is that the Samsung actually has a less resolution display. This is still running 2340 by 1080, so essentially a 1080p Full HD panel. They used to put 2K panels on the base S26, but you're still getting 1080p, so it kind of doesn't feel very flagship with that Full HD resolution right there. And some would argue, well, Nick, bro, it's a 6.3, still over 400 pixels an inch. I mean, I'm barely going to be able to tell a difference. And you'd be right to a certain extent, but the truth of the matter is if you take a look at some of the older 2K base S models, those displays were just sharper. That's the bottom line. So this doesn't feel like the better panel here. And the iPhone gives you brighter, but also sharper text. So a little bit strange to be saying this also gives you just as smooth as a 120 hertz. However, the iPhone the software to me is not as fast. So the Galaxy still wins out in kind of like the speed of daily software. It's just a little bit more snappy, but the iPhone's display is a huge upgrade over previous base models. And 3 months later, both at 6.3 inches. One thing I prefer about the Galaxy though is the punch hole display versus the dynamic island in terms of kind of giving me more of an all screen. And I do like its shape for productivity. However, I do think that this phone was more compact before in the base S model. I don't really like that it got bigger. I can see why they went there. The iPhone's bigger, but at the same time, I liked how the Galaxies of past were a little bit more compact. This is kind of feeling a little bit big now, almost like why not just get a big phone at this point? Because it does with the shape. The perception of it is just bigger feeling just because of the shape, but also the 6.3, just a bigger feeling phone. So is the iPhone 17 though. This is no small phone, and people that like small phones would have been talking about the mini. One of the benefits though is that the 17 does have a proper anti-reflective coating on board. We don't find that on the base model. You got to go up to the Ultra to go ahead and get that anti-reflective property. And so that is kind of a con of the base model S. So for me, 3 months later, I'm giving it to the iPhone. The display is a little bit better to me, but not by a lot. It's just a little bit better. So when it comes to software daily, the iPhone's running iOS 26.5 on board. And I gotta say that the phone itself has been a glorious experience with its polished liquid glass. The only issue is that this phone is a little bit, the software can be a little bit choppy sometimes. I don't mean like a laggy budget phone. I mean like it just doesn't always seem to run at 120 hertz at all times. And some of the animations just don't look as snappy and fast, but they are very fluid and they look very consistent across the operating system. So it feels like a much higher than what you paid for it experience on the iPhone 17. It feels like a very $1,000 like phone experience. So I do like that for this software, but generally I do think iOS 27 is going to make this phone a lot better. So I'm really excited to see what happens at WWDC. And hopefully we get a proper split screen. I'm trying to hit edit up here. We get a proper, and hopefully in the future we get a proper split screen. But generally it's been a very solid experience over the time since getting this device. And it's probably the best iPhone to recommend to most people. The Galaxy, though, has One UI 8.5, which I've been loving One UI 8.5 for just being a cleaner version of Samsung software than we've seen in years past, but also giving us these nice, beautiful icons that look a little bit more 3D-ish. You'll have to look them up close to see, but they look very nice. And also, just the speed and stability of the One UI 8.5 has been good. Of course, we know Samsung is throwing down when it comes to features. They've been doing that for years. This is no exception. And this does have a proper split screen, but also proper multitasking as well. So you can do basic split screen like you can do on a lot of phones, but the ability to have, pop view windows, drag them around. I mean, you can get some serious multitasking done on this device right here if you really wanted to. So it's really more than just a basic split screen on board. You can even have app pairs and stuff of that sort on here, flip them around however you want. So taking a really good advantage of the screen on this software. But also if I go in here to edit, you'll see we can have different layouts here as well. And when you add controls, this does look very similar to iOS, but it's a little bit snappier when scrolling through. I just find the Galaxy to be like a very, very customizable, feature-rich, kind of like whenever you think of you need a feature, it's going to have it. If you want to get granular, you want to go down to the details, you can go download Good Lock. You can really go to town on your full customization. And now with the faster CPU, the 12 gigs of RAM, which is more than the iPhone 17, this phone feels proper flagship in terms of performance and software, and it gets pretty good updates regularly, although they still come faster to the iPhone. So let's cut through the hype of AI and just talk about the reality of it. The Galaxy AI experience is just better. It's not really in beta. It kind of has a lot of features, and they keep adding a few every year, including this year. They added more of these Now features, like this Now Nudge over here. So if you're looking for a phone that's fully equipped with AI experience on device, this is probably going to be the better option. Also, if you hold down over here, you can do circle to search. But Gemini just got better with Android 17 announcements. They're changing the icons up. The Gemini is just getting faster and the models are getting better. Over here on iPhone, you do have visual intelligence via the camera control, and you do have Apple Intelligence, which is some nice rewrite tools and things like that for this phone. Although it's still in beta, there is some useful things. Both of these are way more than powerful enough to run chatbots and stuff of that sort. But the iPhone 17 just feels a little bit behind when it comes to the AI. However, it does improve in one area over this that really matters, and to me that is the battery life. So the battery life on the iPhone 17 has been a better experience for me, even though the Galaxy does have technically the larger battery at 4300 milliamp. I found that the 17 did last a bit longer, which is kind of nice. And also the iPhone 17, while it doesn't charge as fast as some of the faster iPhones out there, it charges kind of pretty much the same as the Galaxy S26, the base. So both of these are doing right around that 25 watt charging speeds. So very, very solid here, just not 45, not 60, not 80. None of those super fast blazing speeds you'll find on some other fast phones. When talking about daily performance though, I do like how this phone is giving you the fast Galaxy 8 Elite Gen 5 for Galaxy over here, and we do have ourselves a 12 gigabyte of RAM on this phone. So it is a very, very nice package in terms of the actual performance you're getting. In addition to that, you do have a really high-end GPU. So overall, this is a very, very fast phone. I will say though that the Exynos is available in certain countries, so you're going to be, depends on which model you're getting, but the US version definitely giving you that 8 Elite Gen 5, 3nm chip, and it just blazes through everything. It's really nice to have all this performance in this size of a package, but again, it doesn't really feel like a super small phone anymore, but it's still compact enough, and it's a very fast, powerful beast. So very, very good performance, pretty much no matter what you're doing. And the thermals on this phone have been actually quite good. Maybe slightly better than the iPhone 17 I found. I feel like you got to go to the iPhone 17 Pro and the iPhone 17 Pro Max to get the best thermals on iPhone. These will still get a little bit warm on the 17, but neither of these really were like super cool to the touch. They're pretty competitive. So thermals wise, when you're setting either of these up, they get pretty warm. When you're playing a game while charging, stuff of that sort, you definitely get a little bit of heat in here. So nothing like super uncomfortable, but definitely enough to notice that like, okay, this is not a pro phone with those great thermals over here. These one definitely can warm up a little bit, you know? So when it comes to the camera, it's the iPhone 17 for me. The reason why is because the iPhone 17's cameras are a lot closer to me than the Galaxy S26s are to the S26 Ultra. They kind of just use cheaper layout here for the Galaxy S26, and it doesn't mean that the cameras are bad. They're still tack sharp. They still look good. They process really well, and they still give you a lot more zoom than the iPhone 17. However, that zoom is not super high quality at the 30 times. What I do like is you have at least high resolution pictures at 50 megapixels. You can do high resolution 8K 30, but you don't get all the log and stuff of that sort. And the iPhone still tends to turn out a little bit better in social media. I like the color reproduction a little bit better in my experience. I like camera control to go ahead and snap those photos. And the video to me is just bar none the best for this segment right here. Definitely super amazing focus, looks so good in social media. And it's a camera that it's like the only one you really need. Now, if you go ahead and take a look at the front facing camera, they also have an extremely ultra wide angle on there. So that's also very nice. On the Galaxy though, they do have a solid front facing camera with, let's go over here to photos, with a little bit of ability to back out, but not a super wide angle, but still the images look pretty good. I think either way you go, consumer's going to be mostly happy here on this device right here, but I still think it's being beat by the iPhone simply due to, you know, the social media uploads and stuff of that sort. But the Galaxy is not bad. I just wish they would put like ultra level cameras on the base version, or at least on like the Plus, or make like a S26 Pro so we can get a lot of those enhancements on the smaller phone, as I feel like Apple makes just a little bit of a cut, but you kind of have the same type of main sensor. This has a 50 megapixel. This has the same main sensor as the Pro Max. They should put the 200 megapixel on this base model. You get what I'm saying? Some areas where the Galaxy doesn't beat the iPhone is it has Bluetooth 5.4. We have 6.0 on the iPhone over here. And 3 months later, I got to say, one thing I do like more is transferring files. Not only is this faster with a 3.2 USB-C, this actually has a better file application. So inside here, the Files app, and this goes for all the Samsung phones and products, they just have a better file layout, and transfer them to the computer was a lot snappier overall. This also supports Samsung DeX on board, so you can definitely do wireless DeX with this phone. It's pretty cool overall, and I do like that about it. So it has those benefits. Now, the iPhone has 2.0 over here, so not super fast, but it has great emergency SOS features on board here, and also iMessage, FaceTime are still, it's definitely a great thing for the iPhone 17 over here. I also found the 17 speakers, it gets slightly louder, but it's very, very tight. And so the verdict's in. These phones were pretty darn close overall. They definitely are very, very competitive products right here. But 3 months later, I feel like I prefer the iPhone 17 in this direct comparison, because I do feel like the 17 is less compromised versus its top tier cousin, or brother, the iPhone 17 Pro. This feels like a very small compromise compared to that phone. It has like the same display. It has like the same main sensor. You're just giving up a little bit of zoom, and that's about it. The overall phone just kind of feels like the same thing. Whereas the Galaxy has a 1080p display, which is less than the S26 Ultra, doesn't have the 200 megapixels. So it just feels like you're getting too many cuts here that don't really give it like that same feeling as the iPhone 17. Even if it has more RAM and the same chip, it just, to me, it just doesn't feel like a S26 Ultra smaller version. Whereas this feels like a smaller version of the iPhone 17 Pro, especially considering that they gave it the 120 hertz. But at the end of the day, it really still comes down to your subjective preference over which one you prefer when it comes to software, because both of them, from a hardware standpoint, are very competitive. However, in this particular competition, even though it's a 50 megapixel, this is a 48, I just find the 17 to be, to me, a little bit closer to that iPhone Pro feeling, versus this one just kind of feels like a base model. That's probably because the S26 Ultra is so darn good that it's hard to make this one feel like that. But thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you haven't already. And again, you can't go wrong with either. And if you found this video helpful, entertaining, informing, enjoying, you might actually like this video as well. I'll catch you on the next episode. Nick here. Be sure to be well, and peace.